MTG Scoundrels, it's in the cardboard. Ladies and gentlemen, scoundrels of all ages, welcome back to another episode of Watered Weekly. This week on the docket, we have Abzan Roots versus Lantern-Control. Looks like the Roots deck going to 6 here. Lantern-Control, classic list, specifically won a Pro Tour, a Modern Pro Tour back in the day. Looks like they started with an Underworld Cookbook here. Overgrown Tomb for the Roots player. Into a Cauldron Familiar, bringing us to 19 all. Urza's Saga for the Lantern player. Into the deck's namesake, Lantern of Insight. Top cards being revealed. Apologies for the camera not catching the Lantern's deck top card here. But that is a Codex Shredder, and that's the start of the combo. Forcing the mill of the Chord of Calling into an Urza Saga. Urza Saga for turn. Into an Agatha Soul Cauldron, attacking for 1. It's like discarding a Spire of Industry here to the Underworld Cookbook. The Roots player here, friendly enough to provide a food token. Looks like an Abzan list for the Lantern Control player as well. There is a Tyvar on top. Oh. Land for turn. Interesting decision to attack with the Cauldron Familiar. I guess you gotta make him make the token, considering bringing the Cauldron Familiar back is probably pretty easy. You usually don't play that card without food. Cookbook activation, discarding another Spire of Industry. Currently a 6/6 on board. For that construct. Saga trigger. Makes another token. Looks like fetching. Achievement unlocked. Wow. Pixis a Pandemonium for the Lantern player. Just having another one of those effects. Being able to get rid of the top card of a library is really helpful for this Lantern Control deck, of course. Looks like both constructs are currently 8/8s. Another Soul Cauldron on top. Attacking for 8. Bringing us to 8/18. End step, make a construct. trigger on the stack for the Urza Saga. Making another construct. Looks like in response to the trigger, activating the Underworld Cookbook here to make another food. Making those construct 9/9s. The Roots player finding an Underworld Cookbook. And there's an Insidiousroots on top of the deck. Plays another Saga for turn. Casting a Witch's Oven. Alright. And like that, we have some business. Passing the turn here. Of course, the Lantern player isn't going to allow that Roots to stay on top of the library for very long. Pixis gets activated, exiling the top card of the library for each player. Untapping. Saga triggering. Looks like attacking for 18 here. Okay. We'll chase Daredevil loop. Putting a food into play, putting the Oval Chase Daredevil back into hand, sacking the food, bringing the cat back, bringing us to 9/17. A cat will block. Looks like a construct will block as well. Construct only a 5/5 currently. The cat gets sacked to the Witch's Oven. Looks like moving to damage. Construct dies. Brings back the cat. Bringing us to 10/16. Untapping. Drawing. Revealing the top card. Saga trigger. Interesting spot here. Land for turn. Looks like into a Tyvar. Tyvar is pretty great for decks with activated abilities and for recurring things that are cheap from the graveyard. Speaking of which, minusing here, milling 3. Bringing back a Bartolome. Bartolome is an interesting card. Lets you sacrifice artifacts and creatures to it to make it bigger for free. One of the cheapest free sack outlets to have been printed in a while. Essentially a 2-mana carrion feeder. Looks like, yep, making another dude. Milling the top card. Untapping. These constructs are big enough at this point. It's a matter of getting rid of blockers. Great thing about the cat oven combo is that usually stems the tide a little bit. However, considering this is lantern control, and that saga is about to do saga things, there's the pithing needle. Looks like the pithing needle naming Witch's Oven here. So that puts the Abzan Roots player into a bit of a pickle. Now granted, there's still a cookbook. As we learned earlier, Oval Chase Daredevil is in fact in hand. But there is a prismatic ending. Which, well, eggs, well, looks like sacking the cat to Bartholomew. And there is a Ghoul Caller's Bell. Declaring attackers, making a food, sacking a food, bringing the cat back, draining for 1. Problem is, alright, 3 creatures. Doesn't really matter how they end up in the graveyard. They are going to end up in the graveyard here. Looks like exiling the Boseiju off the top here with the Pixis. Fetching. Going to 10. Finding a forest. Ghoul Caller's Bell, of course, is just another Codex Shredder in this instance. Just some redundancy to avoid pithing needles. And there's a land on top. And scooping it up there. Game 1 going to lantern control. Shockingly resilient, ultimately, but couldn't create enough blockers to get in front of those constructs long enough. Thank you all so much for watching us here at MTG Scoundrels. I appreciate all the love and support that we've received. Definitely check out the description below for deck lists, as well as timestamps to the individual games, so we can move forward and backward as you would please. The Roots list here probably bringing in some amount of artifact hate. And really the Lantern Control deck probably doing something similar to cut down on the activated abilities, though they are already running Pithing Needle in the main. And of course, if you guys are interested in food tokens, clue tokens, definitely come over and check out Arcane Artistry, who happens to be playing in this match today. Here, Aaron, on the Lantern Control list. I know moving forward they plan on making more tokens here as a little wider option. Description will have a link to Arcane Artistry's Etsy account. All right, moving on to game 2 here. Looks like, yep, roots going to 6. Windswept Teeth, cracking it. Looks like making the decision to go to 17. Finding an Overgrown Tomb. And there is a Cauldron Familiar bringing us to 1819. Concealed Courtyard. Into a Thoughtseize. Probably taking the roots here, though Haywire Might could also be an option. Haywire Might is kind of recursive in these Tyvar lists. It can really slow down what the Lantern Control player is doing here. Taking the Haywire Might. Attacking for 1. Bring us to 1816. Underworld Cookbook and pass. Duress. Duress taking the insidious roots here. Into a ghoul caller's bell. Attacking for 1. Land for turn. Into a walking ballista for 1. Bring us to 16-15. Urza's Saga. Into Lantern of Insight. Oval Chase Daredevil on top. And there is a Codex Shredder. I don't really ever like to see the Lantern player doing math. There's a samwisegamgee on top. So it looks like the Roots list has a infinite food combo here as well built in. Milling the Sam. Land on top. Roots on top. Land for turn. There is a pithing needle. I would assume naming Codex Shredder or Ghoul Caller's Bell. But there's the surgical extraction. Probably a slight misplay from the Roots player here. Probably should have tried to ultimately activate the oven before playing that last card. I don't know, it's a tough decision. When it's a pithing needle in hand, and you get to slow down what they're doing so that way you can see better cards instead of the top 2 being milled every single time, it's going to be a tough break. Because that's really what Lantern Control wants to do. Really just wants you to stop playing Magic. Or at least stop playing Magic on your terms. Tacking in for a couple there. Passing the turn. Looks like that's a Dryad Arbor on top. It's getting milled here. There's a Witch's Oven. Yep, looks like that Codex Shredder was what was named with that pithing needle. Fetching away the Witch's Oven. That's an interesting call. Getting the 3rd color. Chord of Calling on top. Untapping. Drawing the Chord of Calling. Revealing the Finale of Devastation on top. Heart in the tank here. Attacking for 2. It's like blocking the Walking Ballista pinging the Lantern player. And taking 1 off the Cauldron. Familiar. That was an interesting decision. I mean, reality is you're probably not going to end up seeing that Finale of Devastation anyway. So leaving up Chord, not the worst idea here. No, leaving up Chord for 2 might leave you more options. Alright. There's another construct off the Urza Saga. Urza Saga triggers and finds. Probably a Pithing Needle. No, finding the Pyxis of Pandemonium. I mean, that puts a pretty hard lock, ultimately. So that does make sense. Sometimes you just gotta go for the thing that's gonna win you the game. This is a tough spot. Both of those constructs are now at least 6/6s. Speaking of, swinging in for 6, bringing us to 9 to 11. End step. Chord of Calling. 4/0. Finding Asmo, I presume. Yep, finding Asmo and finding the cookbook off of the Asmo. The real question is, what outs are there? Top card is a land. Top card is a cat. Cauldron Familiar. Would be surprised to see this one go straight to the yard. This one probably gets exiled. Looks like saying go. Third land for the Lantern player. Ancient Stirrings. Finding a land. Land to hand. There's the pithing needle. Looks like name and cookbook. Cookbook being discarded. To the cookbook to make a food. And there's another cookbook. Alright, 2 giant constructs. And there's a cauldron familiar on top. I doubt that stays there. Attacking for a bunch. Going to 1. Yep. Exiling the top card face down. In this case, the familiar. Land on top. And that will probably do it. Oh, it looks like the pithing needle actually named Asmo. Which makes sense. Multiple food tokens here. Not going to do enough. Activating the codex shredder. Milling the Court of Calling. Discarding a land, making a food. Activating the Goo Caller's Bell, excuse me. Sacking a food. Going up to 4. Playing land for turn, passing. Making another food off of the Underworld Cookbook. Constructs are huge. There is the prismatic ending. And we'll scoop it up from there. Game, set, match to Lantern Control. Thank you all so much for watching us here at MTG Scoundrels. Appreciate all the love and support as always. If there's a deck you would like to see in the future, please let us know in the comments below. We'll be back next week with more modern action. And as always, we will see you all next week.